What's up guys, Sean here, and today I want to talk about an ongoing push among progressive politicians to close down dollar and discount stores, allegedly to help the poor. Now, you guys might not know this about me, but one of the reasons why I identify myself as a libertarian is actually because I am concerned for the poor in society. Now, I know a lot of you are hearing that and you're saying, whoa, wait a minute. If you were concerned about the poor, then you would identify as progressive. You know who talks about the poor all the time? Bernard McSanderson. Bernie Sanders is always talking about the poor. And yes, while I'll grant that that is true, and I'll grant that many progressives do care about the poor. And in fact, despite what you might hear from any given political actor trying to smear their political opponent, care for the poor is actually something that runs across the political spectrum. One of the problems that I have with progressives, and one of the things that I break with them most on, is their solutions. Because when you delve into the solutions of progressive politicians, you tend to find out that a lot of their solutions don't really help the poor, and in fact, really are designed to shape the world in their vision. They're more about control than actually solving the problem. And a lot of times it's because there is a belief amongst progressive circles that they should be the ones to design the world, and if you give them that control, then they will solve the problems. But unfortunately, it's not the case. Now, the reason I open with that statement, other than the fact that I like to hear the sound of my own voice, and I expect you in the audience to like to hear the sound of my voice, is because it's a perfect prelude to what's going on with dollar stores across this country. You see, politicians from across this country, mostly from the Democratic Party, mostly from people that fancy themselves to be progressive members of the Democratic Party, have noticed the rise in dollar stores like Dollar Tree, Dollar General, and the Family Dollar across this nation, and they've decided that they need to act legislatively against these discount stores because, according to them, the reason there's obesity in the country is because poor people shop at these stores. Now, the reason for this progressive push to limit or outright ban these types of discount stores across this nation is because of a combination of a couple of progressive myths that are just stacked up on top of each other. And the first one is this myth of food deserts. Essentially, for the last 20 years, there's been this argument that the reason why people are obese, and specifically disproportionately poor people are obese in this country, is not because they make bad choices, because of course it can never be that these people are making bad choices. It's because they don't have the options because they live in what are called food deserts, places where they just don't have access to healthy foods. There's no grocery stores in these poor neighborhoods. There's no fresh produce, therefore they're obese, therefore you can't blame them for being obese because in reality, they're just victims. It's not their actions, it's just the society as a whole. The systemic systems of structural systemic systems that are making these people overweight. Now, this is straight up nonsense, and it's always been nonsense. The idea that people are obese because they live in parts of the country that don't have access to fresh produce never made any sense, because if you know anything about poor and low-income areas, you know that it is much easier to open stores or do fruit stands in those exact areas. So in reality, when the myth of food deserts was put under scrutiny, it was discovered that these neighborhoods, these alleged food deserts, aren't food deserts at all. They're actually swarming in food. It's just people making bad choices and thus leading to their own obesity. Another factor in the poor food choices of low-income people is the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, aka food stamps. Food stamps don't work everywhere. In fact, they work very specifically in specific types of stores. So if your food stamps can only be redeemed at a grocery store that has expensive produce, you might opt for the cheaper options. The fruit stand that's selling cheap produce, that has to come out of your pocket, not the government's pocket. So you might opt for the stuff at the store rather than the cheaper, healthier options that could be popping up in random places, as they tend to do across the country. Now look, this isn't me trying to shift the blame from fictional food deserts to the federal government. The SNAP program is a supplemental nutrition program. It's literally in the name. It's not meant to be one's entire food budget, but we can see through SNAP data what people on the program spend that money on. And we could tell with the data from the SNAP program that a lot of this money that's being spent to supposedly keep people alive is going towards sweetened drinks like soda. It's going to snacks like ice cream and cookies. Now, these purchases are made in locations where they have healthier options that people could buy, but this is what people on the SNAP program and people in the country overall choose to spend their food budget on. And after 20 years of the government trying to solve this imagined problem of food deserts across the country by subsidizing the opening of grocery stores that are supposedly healthier for the consumer, that hasn't changed. People sure do shop at those grocery stores, but they make the same choices when they have all the choices in front of them. Now, despite the fact that the food desert myth is just that, a myth, that doesn't mean politicians aren't still trying to solve the problem of food deserts. Worse, it doesn't mean that politicians aren't willing to stack on or pile on or add things to that myth in order to justify more terrible legislation. And this is exactly what's happening when it comes to the dollar store bans that we're starting to see pop up across the country. Basically, stores like Dollar General, Dollar Tree, and Family Dollar don't sell enough fresh produce to the liking of local politicians, so they've decided to craft laws to target these stores and put them out of business because they want stores like Whole Foods and Kroger's and Trader Joe's to open up in their communities. And that's not me being sarcastic or hyperbolic, because if you read the articles, which I will have linked in the description box below that I use as sources to make this video, when you get to the politicians' statements, right after they start talking about how the dollar stores somehow are making their residents fat because, you can't make any good choices if they have a dollar store in your area because, poor people are invalids basically to progressive politicians, they start talking about how they don't like the way that these stores make their neighborhoods look, how they make them look more run down than the politicians have perceived the neighborhoods to be. And in reality, we need grocery stores and fancier grocery stores that are more suitable to that politician. And honestly, it's this kind of attitude from politicians that made me want to make this video. Because if you know anything about the history of these type of stores, specifically Dollar General, you know that they built their stores, and they still do build their stores, to serve communities that other stores completely ignore. 75% of Dollar General locations are in towns of less than 20,000 people. These small town locations across this country are typically about 15 to 20 miles away from a big box grocer like Walmart or Target or any of these other giant grocery store chains that tend to ignore these small areas. Which means that Dollar General's specific business model is to serve communities that these stores ignore. Now, because the average Dollar General location is about 7,500 square feet, which compared to Walmart supercenters, which average 100,000 square feet per location, and the fact that most of their store locations are in places where the rent is typically low, these stores are incredibly profitable, and that's what really bothers these politicians. You have a small box store which, comparatively to a bigger box chain, is paying less in taxes because they have lower operating costs, and you as a politician believe that you're entitled to that fictional tax revenue of these bigger stores, and you believe that Dollar General itself is what's keeping these bigger stores out of there. Now, that's completely not true. I just got through explaining to you guys that it's the business model of these dollar stores to open in locations that the big box stores do not open in, but to a politician, reality is rarely a factor in their policy proposals. As ridiculous as it sounds, politicians would rather take taxpayer money to subsidize the opening of these big box locations on the promise of future tax revenue that rarely ever pans out, then let a private company that doesn't require subsidies that they don't like open up and run efficiently in their communities. In Stonecrest, Georgia, they actually outlawed the opening of small box stores that are under 1,200 square feet and sell most of their items for $5 or less. And they did that under the asinine justification that outlawing these type of stores somehow will improve the lives of people in poverty. I mean, seriously, if you're poor or you're on a fixed income, Dollar Tree is an excellent option for certain items. I've shopped at Dollar Tree when I had a lot less money, and it really helped me out. And before I actually had a driver's license and I could actually make the trip out to Dollar Tree, I wasn't shopping at Whole Foods. You know where I was shopping? At 7-Eleven and local corner stores, which have insanely high prices. And ironically, at least for me, all the money that I saved from not shopping at these corner stores, which have insanely high prices, and not shopping at 7-Eleven and shifting to Dollar Tree, actually made my diet healthier because I had all that money left over to go to grocery stores and get better food that they don't typically carry at the Dollar Tree. And apparently I'm not alone in this, because there have been dollar store locations that have closed down in small towns, and big box stores did not move in to fill the void. People just started shopping at 7-Eleven or gas station markets. They paid way more money for their items, and they weren't eating any healthier. These attacks on dollar stores are absurd on every level. It's been proven time and time again that the problem of obesity in this country is due to the fact that people are making bad choices, not that they have a lack of choices. When you have a grocery store that has fresh produce, people still make bad choices. They still buy snack foods. They still buy processed foods. They still buy soda. That's not Dollar Tree's fault. That's people making the decisions' fault. Laws like this one in Georgia and other laws being passed across the country that try to make it more difficult for these dollar stores to open so close to one another don't make this country better. It doesn't make the lives of poor people in this country better. It makes them worse. Dollar stores like this typically open in underserved areas in the market. That's their entire business model. They don't create underserved areas in the market. But that's not what this was ever really about. This is about politicians, specifically progressive politicians, thinking it's their job to engineer society. They believe it's their job to decide what choices you have. This is also about grocery store chains and big box stores not liking a new competitor in the market. There's a ton of complaining in the articles that you read about this topic about how these dollar stores sell certain items cheaper than the grocery stores sell them for, so grocery stores are losing money because of these dollar stores. That's how the market works. That's not something for politicians or the state to solve, but that doesn't stop these businesses from lobbying against the dollar stores and passing regulations specifically targeted at them. But those are just my thoughts on the topic. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. As always, if you like this video, then hit the like button. If you want to subscribe, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all my social medias. They're linked in the description box below. The support links are also linked there, including my Teespring store, PayPal, Venmo, Patreon, Subscribestar, etc., etc. This has been me talking about progressives attacking the poor in the name of saving them. Till next time.